Right, we'll start. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the special Carnegie Mellon Mumbai interview with Debjani Ghosh, who's the president of NASSCOM, the National Association for Software and Service Companies. My name is Aashay Doshi. I'm a 2019 MBA grad from Carnegie Mellon. I'll be hosting this interview along with Rekha Koita, who will be leading Q&A, and who also happens to lead the CME Mumbai alumni chapter. So before we start, I'd like to welcome Rekha to say a few words of welcome for Debjani, as well as our audience.
Thank you, Aashay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today for this very special session with Debjani Ghosh. And thank you so much, Debjani, for joining us today. I think it's a very interesting area. I think it's a topic which is probably, especially at this point of time, right, very close to many people's hearts. So I think it's, I mean, I myself am personally really looking forward to seeing, to hearing what you have to say. And I think the current, with the pandemic, right, everything has changed, right? Consumer behavior has changed. The way, businesses are kind of engaging, interacting has changed. There is just so much happening. And there's this tremendous opportunity, but there are also so many challenges. One of which is, of course, the whole, the skill-based and managing your talent pool, I think, is a huge challenge for all IT companies, and I see that on a daily basis. So I can I'm really looking forward to hearing you. So I think I'm not going to take too much time, and a big thank you to the audience, of course, and to Aashay for putting in all the hard work and organizing everything. So just handing it back to you, Aashay, to take this forward.
Sure. Thank you, Rekha. And today's interview is personally very interesting, Debjani, because as a 90s child, we grew up with those rotary dial phones at home.
You're making me feel so old, Aashay. Thank you, but carry on.
Today we are talking about virtual reality and augmented reality.
I'm talking to 90s kids. Okay, got it. Start.
1990 at the brim. So just about 1990. My point was that the digitization that I've seen, at least even from the 90s, has been phenomenal, that I'm personally adjusting. And in 2020, India and the world was kind of delivered a shock with the COVID pandemic, where businesses, individuals, and institutions had to digitize almost overnight. And if you didn't digitize, you died. Now, the government of India's initiative of Digital India has been a bedrock foundation, and pioneers like you, Debjani, have weathered us through the storm for this new technological and digitization age. I think the real question now is, now that we are ready, India is at the forefront for the digital innovation, how can we get our skill level ready? We are a digitally literate society. We have 700 million people connected to smartphones, but are we digitally skilled? And I think today that's the topic that we will address. For the audience, Debjani doesn't need any introductions, but she's the first ever woman president of NASSCOM, which is a huge achievement. It's a $200 billion IT BPM lobby in India that works on 3 different angles. One is upskilling and reskilling India. That is our topic today. Second is harboring innovation in the country. And third is working with global governments to ensure India is the IT hub. So Debjani, you've been the Woke Tech Leader of the Year 2020. Listed Business Today's India's Most Powerful Women. We are very, very excited to hear from you. Before we start, would love to have you say a few words of welcome to our audience as well as our community.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me, for having me here. Looking forward to the discussion, and thank you to everyone who's joined us. I completely forget which day of the week it is today, but I'm assuming it's towards end of week, Thursday, Friday, something like that. So thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. And as Rekha said, put in your questions as we have. I want this to be as interactive as possible. So would love to hear what's on your mind, and we'll take it from there.
Absolutely. Thanks, Debjani. Before we start, I'll go over the format real quick for our audience. It's going to be around 40 to 45 minutes of our interview, followed by the Q&A session. For the audience, as Rekha mentioned, please put in your questions in the chat box, and in the last 15 minutes, we will unmute you so you can directly ask Debjani your question. So we can get started, Debjani. So let's take a 20,000-foot view into the Indian IT landscape. So over the last few years, India went from being kind of the back office of the world to now leading the major tech exports of the world. We're a $200 billion industry. You got to the forefront of NASSCOM before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and now hopefully towards the end of pandemic. What has been your experience leading NASSCOM through this storm and before the storm? And what are the challenges and opportunities that you've seen?
Wow, that's a very loaded question. So when I look back at the last 2 years, right? This industry to me, and I've grown up in this industry. I joined this industry in '96, I guess, around the time you guys were coming to planet Earth. But I joined the industry at '96, and I've grown up in this industry. And for me, this industry has always stood for resilience, because the first 21 years of my career was in a company called Intel. And where every day we were being told that Moore's law does not apply anymore. Moore's law is dead, therefore Intel's dead, PCs are dead. So, and every day we were reinventing ourselves. And every day we were proving that there is way more life to Moore's law, because innovation is not dead, right? So I come from that background. And for me, resilience is tremendously important, because I've seen the power of resilience. It keeps you thriving. So this industry has always stood for resilience. I gave one example of one company, but it has always stood for resilience. I think the last 2 years was the ultimate test of overall resilience of this industry. Our connection with our people, how resilient is that? Our connection with our customers, how resilient is that? Our BCP, our business continuity processes, it was the absolute stress test for BCPs anywhere in the world. But how resilient are they? And when you look at the industry, and when you look at the way we behaved in the last 2 years, the first 2 weeks was all about people, keeping people safe, right? At that point, the Indian laws did not allow a large part of our industry to work remotely. So that's where the power of NASSCOM comes in, where we work with the government, get the laws changed pretty much overnight. And then 2 million people move, not just to their homes, but to remote cities, wherever in India home is. And not just people, not 2 million, 4 million people, because at that point we were 98% remote work of a 4.5 million industry. But people, and then came the bigger challenge, moving assets, because we had to set up a very secure infrastructure for people to work from home. So this was just amazing how it happened. So the power of resilience, the power of collaboration, the power of problem solving, all of that came into play. And when the second wave happened, we were ready. At that point, we had gone back to office, as in we were 95% or 90% remote, around 5 to 10% in office. Overnight, we went back to 98%, where just the 2% absolutely critical jobs were still in office, 98%, I think. But then the focus shifted to employee wellness, getting them vaccinated, getting families vaccinated, getting communities vaccinated. And I think what emerged as the character, what we grew as our character in the pandemic, was resilience with empathy. And to me, I think we just went forward 1,000 steps, if not more, towards building a truly sustainable industry by adding empathy to a key, to the CEO radar or to the CEO priority, and adding that as a key character of this industry. So for me, that was the key learning was, the power of resilience, and we are really good at it. But we have to marry that with empathy, with employee engagement. It was really funny, not funny, sorry, it was really amazing that in the pandemic, and thankfully what I'm seeing is that's not going away, which is a great sign. Employee wellness became the number one CEO priority. And I'm so thankful that even now that's not going away. And I hope that absolutely continues, because if that happens, the rest pretty much takes care of itself. So those were some of the learnings, some of the changes. And I just think we have a tremendous opportunity right now ahead of us to rebuild. Rebuild not just the industry, but rebuild with tech. And we just have to ensure we don't rebuild the past. That's not going to help. We have to rebuild the new future. We have to rebuild a sustainable future, an inclusive future. So let's see how that goes.
Awesome. I can't even imagine the challenge of managing 4 to 4.5 million people, especially given the per square footage area of an average Indian house and having everyone working from home. I think the key was empathy there, and I'm glad. Speaking of resilience, we have Siddharth here who has turned on his video. Thanks, Siddharth.
Hi, Siddharth.
Hello, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Thanks, Siddharth, for making this happen. We can get to the Q&A towards the end when you can ask the questions. Does that work?
Yeah. Sure.
Sounds good. So, Debjani, on the topic of readiness, so you said, this is the time to build and take advantage of. An amazing stat is only 12% of India's workforce seems to be digitally trained as of today. Now, when we have a digitally literate society, more than an actually literate society that has access to internet thanks to geo and other innovations, could you elaborate more on what NASSCOM is doing to fuel this digital training to the masses? How are we scaling these trainings to the masses? I think you have something called the Future Skills Prime program that digitally trains individuals. So could you elaborate more on how you are thinking about the upskilling?
So there's a difference there, right? One is basic digital literacy. And honestly, there's not much to be done there. Give the kids today are being born digital natives, right? You give them access, they will train themselves. They don't need a lot of skills, etc. So I mean, that part we are not so worried about. It's more of access. How do you enable access, right? But the bigger worry for us is what we call the digital skill set, which is a combination of the emerging tech skills, be it cloud, be it AI, be it cybersecurity, etc. And more importantly, I mean, today you're getting hired for two things. You're getting hired for your aptitude, which is how much you know, how much of these, how much depth you have in these emerging technologies. And more importantly, you're getting hired for your attitude, the way you think. How do you think? We don't teach attitude. We don't even cultivate attitude. We want everyone to conform to a certain way, right?
We teach the hard skills. The soft skills are
questions, follow the orders, follow the book, and that's it. And that just doesn't cut it. That makes the youth tremendously unemployable, because we today need problem solvers over everything else. So today, when you look at the large amount of people graduating, frankly, less than 10% are actually employable, not because of aptitude. Aptitude they may have. The biggest problem is today is they don't have the right attitude that the industry needs. Having an engineer sit in the background and code is just not going to cut it anymore. We need the engineer to sit with the customer and identify the automation of the business process and figure out what the end-to-end solution needs to be. And if the engineer is not able to communicate, if the engineer is not able to interact with the customer, work in collaboration with cross-functional teams, etc., not going to cut it. Totally not. If the engineer can't problem solve, that's not going to cut it.
Right.
So there's a critical need today of marrying the two. And NASSCOM's focus is really to move the effort from STEM to what we call STEAM, which is STEM plus arts thrown in, because that is going to be critical, which is what we are calling digital skills or future skills.
Right.
And since this has to be done pretty much on steroids, we are working with government to drive a mass scale training initiative, which is focused first on upskilling and reskilling the existing workforce, not just of the IT industry, but banks, hospitals. They all need data analysts, they all need coders, they all need cybersecurity specialists. So everybody needs it, right? So there's a tremendous focus on reskilling and upskilling, and then building the pipeline, which is getting students to build. And students today, we just need them to focus on building the foundation with respect to some of these areas, figure out where you want to go, and then build a strong foundation in that area. But you also simultaneously have to focus on what used to be called soft skills, but now I call them absolutely critical skills. You have to build on those, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to decide whether you will get hired or you won't.
Right. Absolutely.
So that is the key focus. So NASSCOM Future Skills Prime, it's an open platform. It's out there. Anyone can join. Anyone can log in, whether you're a student or you're working in any company or any sector. And what we do is we provide 2 levels of training. One is just the foundational courses. You want to know enough of AI. Because it's important in your job. You want to know enough of cybersecurity, so it's important in your job. How do you do that? And then if you say that, okay, this is the sector I want to grow in, or vertical I want to grow in, how do you deep skill? And it's not just theory, but it's theory and applied, right? So that's what NASSCOM Future Skills does. And pretty amazing. I mean, it's been only a few months since we launched it, around 400,000 people already on the platform getting skilled. The fantastic news for us is it's got a tremendously high completion rate. So 25,000 have already completed, and we want to scale that up. And even more fantastic news for me personally is that nearly 35% of that is women.
Oh, fantastic.
So that's been a huge effort, because we want to ensure that women don't get left behind in this move towards reskilling and upskilling. So that's the big focus, you know. I mean, just to give you the numbers, if you take cloud, which is where the biggest demand for skills and job in India is, the demand, the supply for cloud skills is India's the fastest. We are growing at around 25%, the supply, right? And it's faster than any country, America, or any other country out there. But our demand is growing at around 34 to 38%.
Wow. So
that's the gap. That's what we have to bridge.
Right.
And it's the same across all technologies.
Right. And I think that's been a fundamental difference in the last 2 years between what was earlier for multinationals. India used to be a cost hub, right? So you hire Indian engineers as it's a cost-effective way. But now it's like you hire Indian engineers because this is where the talent is and this is where the supply is. So how do we ensure that our supply matches the demand?
You hire Indian engineers because they are critical for your innovation. Now, one of the facts that a lot of people don't know is that if you look at the H-1B visas, right? And if you look at which are the companies that takes the maximum number of H-1B visas, they're the top US MNCs. Right? It's not the Indian companies. The Indian companies, by the way, take less than 10% of H-1B visas. Majority of them are taken by US companies. And there's a beautiful correlation there. The companies that take the highest number of or apply or get the highest number of visas also have the highest R&D spending. What does that tell you? So I strongly believe that we are fueling the world's innovation. Our engineers are. And we have to ensure that we continue to be, you know, like Israel sees the opportunity at that point in time to become the startup nation. I think India has to seize this opportunity and become the talent nation, because businesses will go where talent is, period.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you mentioned an interesting point about Israel. In one of your interviews, you had obviously you're a big fan of the country and the innovation that they've harbored. You said innovation and talent come from the family level, the family unit level. When a child is growing up, the family is pushing him or her to win the Nobel Prize in innovation.
The mother.
The mother is pushing them for innovation, whereas in India, obviously our priorities lie in different, family and other boundaries.
Our priority lies in the numbers. Get 100%, get 99%, get 98%. I don't think there's any correlation between those numbers and real learning.
Right.
And
right.
Creative thinking. What does the industry need now? They need creativity. They need problem solving. As I said, attitude. I don't think the numbers build attitude. The numbers may build aptitude for sure.
Sure.
And I think that's where the disconnect is.
Yeah, and I think, having interacted, with a variety of people from different stratas of society, being an engineer or doctor used to be a ticket out of the middle class, right? So that was you have to get out of this financial status and you have to move to the next level. That was the thinking, which you can't blame the parents because, you're governed by the situation that you're in. But I think, as you said, right now we're at the inflection point where we need to think about how Israel's thought about creating something from nothing and pushing the soft skills angle and holistic thinking from a young age.
I think we are at that point in time where we have an opportunity to completely disrupt our education system, turn it on its head. Right. And if we don't do it, our loss. Very simple. It's just our loss. And I don't think this window will stay open too long. So, frankly, the national education policy is brilliantly framed. How do we accelerate getting it deployed as fast as we can? Because a lot of this, what we're talking about, has actually been thought through in the national education policy.
Right.
It's pretty well designed.
Correct.
So how do we get it implemented? How do we, the other thing, I think we have to just democratize education. For example, we should not have any barriers to entry in terms of if you're a non-engineering student and you want to go for a technical job, you can't be told that's not possible as long as you're willing to train yourself and get skilled for it. I think we have to look at outcome-based model. And so yeah, there's tremendous scope for disruption and innovation within our education system.
And yeah, my next question was going to be on the NEP, and I think it's brilliantly framed. I personally love history, and when I was at the US, I used to talk with professors about their education system versus us. We had the Gurukul system that was overthrown, that had a focus on holistic education. When we were ruled, that got replaced by the traditional one-track education system. I think this is our inflection point to turn that around.
Absolutely.
But in terms of pure numbers, I was looking at, so we've seen a 30% growth in digital deals, 80% increase in cloud spending. It is estimated that we need around 3.9 billion trainings to get to a level where we want to, be the talent factory. So you mentioned working with the government. So what is that in terms of infrastructure? What is your collaboration there, and how on track are we to deliver that?
See, this is something that industry will honestly have to own and drive. Sure, government can help, but this is something where we have to hold the baby and we have to ensure that we grow the baby, right? I mean, this is ours. This is our problem to solve.
Right.
And we are right now thinking as industry, what are the different things we can do? For example, again, I'm taking the example of cloud because this is a prevalent scale across the industry. Everybody needs it. But as we study and we've released a very detailed study of the cloud talent in India. As we look at the cloud landscape, talent landscape, it's very heartening to see that slowly but surely, there we are seeing growth of talent in tier 2, tier 3 cities. Now, with remote work becoming a reality, with hybrid becoming a reality, this throws up tremendous opportunities for industry to rethink where talent is. And start working. And this is something we are thinking through. Can we do a focused initiative with a few states to grow 6 or 10 remote cities, like one for AI, one for cloud, and just build like 10,000 people from here, 30,000 people from here. But that's the kind of initiative we have to now get into. Similarly, amazing number of skilled women out there who are not currently employed.
Yeah.
And we have talked about this for a very long time. And we have done precious nothing to fix this problem. This is the time to finally fix the problem. This is the time to have a concerted effort to get those women back, whatever it takes. I mean, that itself can give you 1 million, 2 million numbers. The amount of skilled women we have out there who are not working for whatever reason. I think so alternate talent pools becomes extremely critical right at this stage for us to go. How do we grow employability at the higher ed level? Right? We are cribbing about they're not, employability is low, etc. So what do we have to do to change that? So one of the things we as industry and as NASSCOM doing right now is sitting down with industry to say, identify what foundational courses you need. Let's build out the foundational courses together so it meets our needs. Let's then work with whoever, ARCT or whoever, to get these courses into as many universities as possible so that the students can actually go through these foundation courses and we increase the level of employability significantly. So I think we have to think through till the structural problem is solved. We have to think through this, disruptive ways to meet the short-term need that we have and grow the overall pool.
Absolutely. I think what you mentioned on women and skilled women not being in the workforce is something I really wanted to push on. Before we do that, just a quick reminder to the audience, please keep putting your questions. I already see there's around 6 questions already. So please put your question. We'll get to the Q&A in around 15 to 20 minutes. So Debjani, I think you touched upon a very, very important point on women participation in the workforce. As of today, around 34% of tech jobs are held by women, which is not bad compared to the global average. We have around 40 to 45% of new graduates, tech graduates that are women. But there is, as you said, there's a lot of latent assets, as we say, like there are a lot of even homemakers or folks that have given up their careers that are still employable, still willing to work and just need that reskilling. So how, on a policy level, as well as on a cultural level, how are you thinking about getting them involved? How is the government, for example, thinking of getting them involved and reskilled?
I think, given how urgent these things are, I think we as industry have to just do it. We can't be waiting for anyone to fix these problems. I mean, that we have to get out of that mindset that every problem has to be fixed by the government. We're capable enough to fix our own problems, right? And I really do hope that India gets, realizes that there's a lot that we can do. This is a conversation that frankly, every CEO today, IT CEO in India is having with me, which is what do we need to do to make this happen? And the first thing I tell them is, you have to accept the fact that the genders are different, all said and done. And if we want to get serious about this, let's look at it let's take the problem and let's analyze it. Why do women drop out? Or at what stage in life? Now, there are two most vulnerable points in their life. One is when they get married, and the second is when they have kids, right? What are our policies, corporate policies, and what are we doing to ensure that we don't allow them to drop out during those two times? What is it that they're seeking there? They're not seeking any special treatment, but flexibility for sure. Right? Because in India, until such time, all the men take cooking classes and child raising classes and become competent with respect to, sharing the workload, the woman has to still, like it or not, bear most of it. So
Right.
flexibility becomes extremely critical.
Right.
So do we have that flexibility built in? How can you build that flexibility in? Are you creating the communities and network? The entire reskilling and bringing them back to work so that they don't feel like they've been left behind.
Right.
But these are the conversations, and there is no magic pill, unfortunately, and no one has the perfect answer. But there are lots of good ideas. And my only suggestion to everyone is don't keep talking, put them into action, start implementing, make
Right.
some mistakes, that's fine. But
Right.
we will figure it out. And when, remote work, hybrid work, while a lot of people feel that they are good for women,
Right.
actually it's not, because today when you look at it, it's the women who want to come back to office, not the men, because remote work means work for home and work from home. But for the men, most men, not all men, but for most men, it just means work from home. So that at least that, and these are real conversations that women are having with me, that at least when I have to come into office, that 9 to 6 was my time away. I need that back.
Right.
I have completely lost that. I need that back. Right. So until, I guess when schools open, etc., things might get a bit better.
Right.
And I'm asking every corporate to have a conversation with its employees, especially both male and female, to say, when you work from home, doesn't matter what gender you are, but work from home and work for home is a shared load that has to be managed, because otherwise we're just going to lose more women. So
Absolutely.
These are the kind of things we have to manage, navigate.
Yeah, you blew my next question out of the water, because my hypothesis was, given the remote work situation and tools available, women can now work from home that were out of the workforce. But you brought an interesting point that they actually want to be in the office, and the homemakers don't want to stay at home.
The fact, there are a few of us who are very privileged and all of that. But the fact of the matter is, in an average middle-class household, when the woman enters the door of her home, she becomes the caregiver, period. Period. It doesn't matter how big a position she's in, how important a job she's doing, but the expectations are all of that secondary. Primary is your family. And until such time those mindsets change, it's very interesting. But today companies are struggling today to get people back, because nobody wants to come back, but the women want to come back.
That's super interesting. I actually didn't even think that would be the case, but and like you said, I think it's time for all the men to take the cooking classes, take the family care. That happened a bit during lockdown, right? It happened a bit when folks didn't have house help at home, and suddenly the men had to wash the clothes, do the housework. I'm sure there were some disputes, but
that goes back to, actually, you're talking about the education reforms, right? I think one of the biggest reforms needed in our education system is to make it gender agnostic. It should not be, the textbooks should not read, he became a doctor, or he became an engineer, and she was a wonderful cook, and she was a wonderful wife. And I think those are the changes we have to bring about. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, it's a change, and on the very, very fundamental level, that as a child, what you're exposed to kind of becomes your ideology when you grow up. Just a quick point on what you said about talking to corporates. I was reading about HCL. It seems like they're doing a very good job on maternity leaves, flexibility for daycare, and providing that almost like Silicon Valley level benefits in India, which is kind of unheard of. I think it's now heard of for the new startups that are funded. Do you think
most companies are going down that path?
Okay.
Most companies are revising their policies, etc., going down that path. Not just the large companies or IT services companies, all. Snapdeal has come up with a brilliant policy for women who are on maternity leave, where they can extend it and work from home, etc. So I think, as I said, people have realized that that's when they lose most women, and flexibility is one of the key reasons. So flexibility and the support system.
Right.
So how can companies build that into its framework? There's a lot of thought going in, and there's some HCL absolutely is doing a fabulous job, but there are lots of new ways or innovative ways of thinking around this that we are beginning to see.
Right. And it's amazing how connected the ecosystem is. So our next interview next month is with Kunal Shah of Cred, and he talks about financial inclusion. The amazing stat is that if we were to service around 100 million women in India, that would increase deposits in banks of 25,000 crores, and 40 million households would get an upgrade. So I think starting from education to financial services to flexibility to corporate, I think it's a connected web that has to be absolutely addressed if we are to move forward as a country and fulfill the talent requirements.
Absolutely. I mean, if women are 50% of the population and we continue to ignore them, then it's like fighting a battle with half of your army, which sort of doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
So,
yeah. And I think this is a fantastic segue into my next section, which is legacy IT companies versus startups, as we've seen. You mentioned Snapdeal having an amazing program. My question and my thought process is like, is there going to be a dichotomy between what a Snapdeal does, a newly funded startup, versus a legacy company such as an Infosys or a Wipro? We are seeing with the new funding boom for startups, there's a huge talent war now. As you said, the supply is lesser than the demand, and you're seeing almost 100% increment in salaries every 6 months, and you have engineers jump around. So if you are a legacy company, like for example, Accenture has 18,600 vacancies as of last week in India. How would you be thinking about attrition? How would you be thinking about changing your core philosophies to manage this talent war that's come about?
First of all, I think the term legacy is dead and gone, because if anybody is relying on their legacy, they are dead and gone. The way the customers are changing, the way the customer demand is changing, the way technology is changing, no company, it doesn't matter anymore how many years you have existed and what your past success is.
Correct.
All that matters today is how agile are you and how quickly can you transform to meet these needs, right? And there are 4 big changes that's happening in the overall IT sector, if you look at it, right? You talked about this, but first is this entire move from cost advantage to customer advantage.
Correct.
And it's not just the startups, or it's the big companies, the mid-sized companies. Everybody's survival today depends on providing better customer advantage than their competition. So
Correct.
That's a huge transformation going on there, right? The second one is just figuring out this entire hybrid model. And I'm bringing this up because this throws open the playing field for everyone. Anyone can become a disruptor in this game, because
Right.
all of them have to figure this out, right? What does a hybrid model look like? Nobody knows. There is no precedence. And what is the impact it's going to have on your business operating model? How can you build it out so that it actually adds to your competitive advantage? So,
Right.
Huge opportunity for innovation, disruption right there. The third is talent.
Right.
Technology today is democratized, right? It is not the differentiator. It is all about the talent and your digital mastery, your ability to use the technology, right? So again, who has the most creative way to attract and then retain the best talent? Attrition rates, as you rightly said, are way higher than anything we have ever experienced, right? So this is where we have to start thinking very innovatively about employee engagement, which is going to be even more challenging in a hybrid work model, because engagement needs physical contact, or at least that's what we believe. We think we don't know the virtual way to do it, right? Nobody does. Nobody
Right.
does. So again, it's fair play for everyone. No one
Right.
has an advantage here, big or small. They'll all have to figure out how to do that, right?
Correct.
And then how do you find those new opportunities? Every sector today is digitizing. There's tremendous. So I actually think we're at a very interesting point in time where anyone can become the disruptor.
Correct.
It's not about how big or small you are. It's about how creative you are, how much of a risk appetite do you have. It's about how fast you are.
Right.
So yeah, I think this one, it's difficult to predict how it will play
Right.
out, but it's definitely very interesting to watch and see how it pans out.
Right. And to your point, so Infosys today has a close to 14% attrition rate. And now with salaries increasing, Indian companies will also have to think about their bottom lines, right? Earlier, you used to have the leverage in terms of labor cost versus actual output when we used to export our technology services. The gap used to be pretty big. Now the gap is reducing. So how do you remain competitive on a bottom line level as well is going to be fascinating.
I don't think cost is going to be that much of a, I mean, it's always important, but honestly, you can be the cheapest, but if you don't have the ability to innovate better than competition, you're still going to lose. As I
Right.
said, the fundamental change in business process is the shift from cost advantage to customer advantage.
Customer.
And that's a huge transformation taking place.
Absolutely.
So today, I think from a CEO perspective, everyone is thinking about their ability to innovate. And a very interesting aspect that's bringing in is the aspect of co-creation. So do you have a good enough program to attract the best startups to co-create with you? So there's your M&A strategies are becoming tremendously important today because
Correct.
innovation can't be all in-house, right? So it's actually, I think this is a good problem to have because it's forcing us to get out of the comfort zone and think
Absolutely.
very differently.
Right. And it's interesting that you mentioned co-creation because I was talking to Samar Singla, who runs Jungle Works and Jugnu, and that's a rising tech company, but they have to compete with the Swiggies and the Snapdeals and the Creds of the world for talent. So what he said is that they actually have their own training camps. They hire for a 6-month period. They have their own education, skills-based training camps to convert raw talent from small towns into actual employable, entities in your organization. Personally, at Carnegie Mellon, Carnegie Mellon was started by Andrew Carnegie to train industrial workers to work in his factories, right? Like that was the idea. Today, TCS has invested $40 million in Carnegie Mellon because, you will get the talent back at TCS. So do you see a future where, say, a Cred or a Swiggy is investing in universities in India? All the startup funding that you've got today, a portion of it is allocated to investment in education, development in universities for the talent.
Already happening in various forms. Look at Zoho. Sridhar Vembu is sitting in a village when that's his headquarters. And by the way, his team in that village is actually creating some of the most world-class solutions sitting in the village. And what is he doing? He's training, he's skilling people. He's created an educational institute.
Right.
That is investment in education is an investment you have to make. It's a strategic investment you have to make. It's no more a good to do, or earlier we used to do it out of CSR budgets because you got a lot of PR out of it and blah, blah, blah. Today, it is a strategic investment you have to make. It's very, very simple.
Absolutely. And Sridhar Vembu is obviously like a very grassroots entrepreneur. I think from my knowledge, are new startups doing this as well, not creating their own university, but investing some of the raised capital into university? Is that happening already?
I don't know if a lot of startups are doing this or not, but they're definitely waking up to the fact that talent is the most important piece of the puzzle. And definitely beginning to have conversations around what do we need to do to grow the talent and what do we need to. So I think maybe a few months, I won't even say years, but maybe a few months,
Yeah.
we will see, and they are tremendously clever folks. They're going to figure this out very quickly, that we need to connect back with the universities, etc. Some already are, but I won't say it's the common practice. Definitely not. But I think that will change soon.
Awesome. That's good to know. And, before we jump into the Q&A, Debjani, one question before we go. So I know we've spoken about government, we've spoken about NASSCOM's partnership with it. What is it that excites you for the next 2 years that you see in the roadmap with NASSCOM and government collaboration? And on a policy end, what are you most excited about in terms of change that's coming?
See, right now, everything we touch has the opportunity to turn into gold. And when I say we, I mean the IT industry, right? The pace of digitization is going through the roof. Tech intense density is increasing through the roof. New opportunities are created. Each new opportunity is creating like billions of dollars of opportunity for like just AI. If we get implementation of AI right, it'll add 500 billion to India in the next 5 years, right? So the opportunities are limitless. I think the good thing is we have a government, especially I'm talking about the Prime Minister, the Minister of IT, the Ministry of IT. We have a government that is as hungry as the industry to say, let's go after these opportunities and let's leverage. And what do you need from us? And if the need is stay out of our way, we'll stay out of your way, but tell us what is needed. And that partnership is stronger than ever, right? For example, we've identified areas like skilling. So let's go and really partner and make it happen. Policy reforms, overnight reforms that we are seeing, and disruptive reforms, OSP, the recent, the intermediary GST issues that got resolved for the industry. There'll be just a spate of reforms that has been the telecom reforms that have happened. So the government is in the mood to make these big changes. And I think the Prime Minister himself is extremely clear that he wants to make these mega disruptive reforms that can absolutely change the landscape for the industry, right? And I think we have to figure out how to leverage it to the fullest, right? Correct. So in terms of policies that, I think there are, like education I already talked about. We also have to have a complete redo or relook at labor policies in India, especially as we have new hybrid models coming up. We have the gig economy growing. So I think there's a need to look at the traditional labor laws and see if they still apply or not. I think that requires a lot of debate, discussion, change. I think the data governance policies, privacy policies, protection policies has to come into play. That adds credibility to the country. And that is extremely important for India to have a very strong data governance framework in place. Cybersecurity law act is a must, has to, and there's a very good act that has been developed. Hopefully it'll get approved soon. But these are some of the things that absolutely have to fall in place.
Absolutely. And I think that is a tremendous roadmap and pipeline that you laid out. And on the startup end, we have around 800 to 1,000 startups that have quote unquote flipped. When they go public or when they're raising next round of funding, they shift their domicile to another country because of their laws, and thereby India loses the data. I think Sandeep Dikchandani was talking about 17 lakh crores being the loss because of that. So I think a firm data governance and structured policy will be key to our long-term growth.
And for startups, especially the ease of setting up a business, and equally important is the ease of exiting a business.
Yeah,
I think those are the kind of things we have to look into. We absolutely have to look.
Absolutely. So Debjani, this has been fantastic. So before we get into the Q&A, I see there are 12 questions already. Do you have a hard stop at 7:30, or could you extend for like 5-7 minutes?
I do have another meeting, maybe 2-3 minutes I can, but unfortunately I have to get on to another call.
No problem at all. So Rekha, we can start the Q&A.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'll just call out the names and you can then unmute yourself and ask your questions. The first question is from Vilas Sangle. Vilas, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question to Debjani?
I think he's not online anymore, Rekha.
Okay. But I think his question was interesting, so I'll just read it out in any case. His question is, what's the impact of the pandemic on onshore opportunities for software engineers going forward, given this whole remote and hybrid,
I think it's going to be determined by the kind of work. Where do customers really want onshore? And that is still evolving. So I don't have a definitive answer for that. It is still evolving. We'll have to see how it plays out. If you look at from a company perspective, I think they're doing both. They're building the talent base here. They're also building the talent bases where the customers are. So whatever the model, they will be ready. So from a job perspective, it is boom time right now because the jobs are getting created everywhere. So, but we'll have to see how it plays out.
Okay, thank you. Next question is by Dhanraj. Dhanraj, I think he's there on the call. So Dhanraj, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, good evening. My question is related to opportunities for learning partners or training partners. So what sort of, does the corporate sector encourage that instead of providing in-house training, that learning partners can have students, final year students or third year students trained on the certain skills, and then the corporate world pays to those learning partners or something like that? Do you see opportunities in that case?
I mean, I think companies will have different policies with respect to, as I said, talent is getting extremely important. So companies will have different policies on the reskilling. But a lot of companies use partners or have partners to reskill or upskill. It all depends on quality. It depends on how good or bad you are. But yeah, of course, everyone's looking for partnership opportunities.
Our next question is by Panuwan. Panuwan, would you like to please unmute and ask your question? Panuwan?
I just want to ask, from the corporate, how do we partner with you if we don't do it directly? Because you already tap into this talent training and all of that. Is there a way we can partner and provide the real cases for talents to actually work on their new skills?
Partner with NASSCOM, you mean?
Yes. So Panuwan is with HSBC. So her question was for partnership with NASSCOM. For say if HSBC wants to partner with NASSCOM.
Well, you become a member. And then you work on the different programs. I think HSBC is already a member, so you'll have to check. I'm not sure. But, so we have a community. We work with all our members to make a lot of these things happen. And if there is a specific program you anyway want to get engaged in, etc., reach out. We'll figure it out.
Sounds good.
Okay. The next question is by Sujay. Sujay? He's not there.
Sorry, I've already typed in my question, but can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So
you had
a
couple of questions, Sujay, so you can maybe pick and choose which one you would like to.
So no,
some of them are related,
yeah, some of them are related. I was just curious to understand why. I think you gave an example of Israel. I just find it a little hard to think about Israel because that's such a small population, right? And they have a really nice, social security system. How would, is there something that we can learn from, China and how they, given the kind of population that they have, how do they go about really, upskilling, people out there in that country, is something that NASSCOM is thinking. And the second thing that I'm really concerned about, because I've been an IT guy myself, but now I'm not an IT guy anymore, is that the IT industry in general has not really paid people well. Okay, the starting salary has barely grown 3% for the last 20 years, and that's actually driving a lot of people away from that industry. What is NASSCOM doing about that?
That is not NASSCOM's charter to fix in terms of what salaries get paid, but I think naturally there is, as I think I have repeated several times, the importance of talent is growing tremendously, and companies they're feeling the pain today in terms of finding and also retaining the best talent. So I do believe a lot of and I don't completely buy your argument on IT not paying well. If you look at other industries and you look at what's been happening, and if I look at the salary growth that we have seen in IT, it depends where you are. If you have the right skills, I mean, the kind of premium we are seeing, and we track the salaries in terms of data analysts or cybersecurity experts or robotic experts, it's amazing. You don't get those kind of salaries anywhere else. So again, it depends on what skills you have, right? Because in today's world, you're as good as your skills you have. Very simple. I'm sorry to put it so bluntly, but that's how it works, right? So again, this is where the upskilling and are you building the right skills becomes extremely important. But I think, we're fast moving away from the past world where there were salaries by levels. I think that is got completely disrupted. Today, salaries are by skills. And there are skills that are commanding tremendously premium salaries where companies have to retain the talent. And there are skills which are getting displaced. And, if the churn happens there, so be it. So I think we'll have to think through how do we get more people to upskill themselves for these premium skills.
Yeah, very valid points. Debjani, let me try and squeeze in one more question. I'll ask Advait. Advait, would you like to unmute and ask your question quickly?
Yeah, thanks, Rekha. Hi, Debjani, Advait here. Quick question to you. What would be your advice to any company in the MSME or the social sector? They obviously learn a lot, read a lot about digitalization, but what should they do Monday morning on the ground? Where should they start in their accelerated digital journey?
Find the right people. Find the right people, because you can have the best laid plans, but you're not going to go anywhere without talent, without people. And I think find the right people to take you through this journey. That's what's going to be critical, because I think the biggest mistake some of the smaller companies and by the way, are you Advait from SP Gen?
Yeah, Debbie.
He's my classmate. Hi, Advait.
Hi.
just thought I'll check. But anyway,
Yeah.
The biggest problem we find out with non-IT sectors and also with SME is they think that digitization is automation of existing processes, which is such a waste of money. Digitization is disrupting existing processes to create new processes which are way more effective and which gives you that customer advantage. And the only way you can do that, you can buy the technology for sure if you have the budget, but the only way you can do that is if you have the people to do it. So I think the one thing that has been lacking in SME is the focus on talent, focus on people. I think that needs a huge makeover.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Can we squeeze in one more? I think you have a hard stop, right, Debjani? So should we just wrap up?
If there's a very interesting question, feel free to. Otherwise, it would be great if we can wrap up.
Okay, I think then let's just, I think in the interest of time, I think let's wrap up. Thank you so much for taking out this time for all of us. I think it's been very fascinating, and I could really kind of relate to a lot of the things you said, about the entire talent upskilling, and even this recent point on, looking at technology as a means to kind of disrupt and innovate your business, not as a kind of an MIS tool or, just an automation tool. As even the points on women in the workforce, I think very, very kind of close to my heart. So thank you so much. And I'm sure for those who have missed the session, we'll be anyway sending out the recording soon. So, I'll definitely kind of popularize that so those who have missed can also get a chance to see it. But thank you so much, Debjani, for everything. And thank you, Aashay, for really organizing. Thank you, Siddharth, for helping us to kind of connect with Debjani and get her, for this. And when is our
Thank
next?
you, ma'am. Thank you for.
Thanks everyone. Thanks, Aashay. Lovely talking to you. Great questions.
Lovely as
great
well. We will
discussion.
send you the recording and any feedback requests by email. So
yeah,
looking forward to keeping in touch.
Thank you, Sid. Let's connect soon.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Sid.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
thank you, Debjani. And for
Thank you,
everyone
everyone.
else, our next interview is with Kunal Shah of Cred on October 21st at 6:30 p.m. That's a Thursday. So we will be sending out communication around that as well. So thank you everyone for joining. This was indeed a very, very fascinating discussion. Thank you, Rekha, for the Q&A. This was fun.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.